The torrential downpour over the Silver Ridge Pack territory did little to wash away the crushing humiliation burning in Elijah's chest as he stood alone at the edge of the sacred ceremonial clearing. Just minutes ago, the Pack's former beta had stood before the gathered elders, expecting to solidify his lifelong bond with his mate Chloe. Instead, Chloe had publicly severed their thread, stepping over the shattered traditional binding stones to clasp hands with Alpha Vance, the towering, ruthless leader of the Ironclaw Pack. Vance's arrogant smirk cut through the dim gray twilight as he claimed Chloe for his own, taunting Elijah for his perceived weakness and lack of ancestral Alpha heritage. Abandoned, disgraced, and stripped of his rank for daring to voice his protest, Elijah felt the stinging gaze of his former packmates. Yet, beneath the suffocating weight of betrayal, a strange, dormant embers within his bloodline began to stir, whispering secrets long forgotten by the modern werewolf world. Elijah retreated deep into the dark sanctuary of the Whispering Pines, an ancient forest bordering the realm of the Frostpeak Pack. The silence of the pine needles beneath his boots was a stark contrast to the echoing taunts of the ceremonial ring. He slumped against a moss-covered oak, breathing heavily, trying to process the sheer scale of Chloe's betrayal. They had grown up together. He had poured every ounce of his dedication into building a safe future for them within the Silver Ridge hierarchy. But in the ruthless world of werewolf society, power was the ultimate currency, and Chloe had traded loyalty for Vance's raw, oppressive strength. "You were never meant to rule, Elijah." Her final words echoed in his mind, sharp and cold. "A mere beta's blood can never give me the protection or status an alpha can." What Chloe and Vance did not know was that Elijah carried a lineage shrouded in deliberate obscurity. Generations ago, the Blood Moon lineage, the original ruling alpha blood that possessed absolute command over wolfkind, had voluntarily vanished from official records to escape a devastating war of extermination. Elijah's grandfather had passed down a heavy silver medallion, worn smooth by time, depicting a crowned wolf encircled by eclipsing moons. Up until this moment, Elijah had treated it as nothing more than a bittersweet family heirloom, a token of a fallen past. But as the betrayal ignited a cold, burning fire in his core, the medallion pressed against his chest grew uncharacteristically warm against his skin, vibrating in harmony with his racing heartbeat. As the storm raged on, another figure moved quietly through the perimeter of the Frostpeak territory, observing the disgraced man from the shadows. Lady Evelyn, the current reigning Luna of the Frostpeak Pack, moved with an innate grace that commanded respect without ever needing to raise her voice. Unlike the power-hungry rulers of the neighboring lands, Evelyn was a woman of profound wisdom, quiet strength, and fierce independence. She had ruled her pack with dignity since the untimely passing of her father, resisting dozens of opportunistic suitors who sought to claim her territory through a forced union. Her deep emerald eyes studied Elijah through the curtain of rain, recognizing not a broken dog, but a man holding back a storm far greater than the one howling through the trees. Evelyn stepped out from the cover of the ancient cedars, her dark cloak fluttering in the chill mountain wind. "It is a dangerous thing to bleed emotional blood in a forest populated by scavengers, Elijah," she said, her voice clear, melodious, and carrying an undeniable weight of authority. Elijah snapped to attention, his muscles tensing instinctively as he recognized the high-ranking female. He immediately lowered his gaze slightly, a habit drilled into him by years of strict beta training, but Evelyn gently raised a hand, dismissing the subservient gesture. "Save the bows for those who demand them to feel tall. I saw what happened at the clearing. Vance claims to be an alpha of supreme power, yet he acts like a child stealing a shiny stone." Elijah wiped the rain from his forehead, looking up at the Luna, whose reputation for unyielding justice was famous across the Northern Territories. "He took what he wanted because he had the strength to enforce it, Luna Evelyn," Elijah replied, his voice laced with a raw, gravelly grit. "In their eyes, I am nothing more than a nameless officer without a true alpha crest. I could not protect my place, nor could I hold her interest. Evelyn walked closer, her sharp gaze fixing on the glowing silver medallion peeking out from beneath Elijah's torn collar. A flicker of recognition and deep shock flashed across her face, though she quickly masked it with a calm, composed expression. "Strength is not merely measured by the loudness of a howl or the cruelty of a bite," Evelyn said softly, stepping closer until she was just a foot away. "Your former pack values brute aggression over noble heritage and true honor. They threw away a diamond because they were looking for polished glass." She reached out, her fingers gently hovering over the ancient crest resting against his chest, sending a jolt of static energy crackling through the damp air between them. The shockwave of pure, unadulterated primal energy rippled through Elijah's veins, causing his dark amber eyes to flash with a sudden golden, brilliant light that made Evelyn gasp silently. Evelyn looked deeply into his eyes, seeing the undisputed authority lying dormant beneath his pain. She knew the political storm brewing on the horizons. Alpha Vance was rapidly consolidating power by absorbing smaller packs, and her own Frost Peak territory was his primary target. To safeguard her people from Vance's impending tyranny, she needed a partner of undisputed noble standing, someone whose true lineage could dismantle Vance's claims to total dominance over the region. "I have a proposition for you, Elijah," Evelyn stated, her voice steady and resolute as she held his gaze. "One that will reshape the fate of every wolf in these mountains, if you have the courage to take up a mantle you were forced to hide." "A proposition?" Elijah asked, incredulous, feeling the strange magnetic pull drawing him toward the formidable Luna standing before him. The rain seemed to pause around them, hanging like suspended crystal droplets in the crisp night air as her words hung heavily between them. Evelyn took a slow breath, stepping firmly into his personal space, her emerald eyes reflecting the mystical golden hue that still flickered within his irises. "Marry me, Elijah," she declared directly, her tone unwavering and full of determination. "Become the Lord of Frost Peak. Stand beside me as my equal, my partner, and my mate, and together we will show Vance and your former pack what a true ruler actually looks like." Elijah stood frozen, the shock of her proposal echoing through his mind against the background roar of the thunder. Why would a celebrated noble Luna offer her throne and her heart to a disgraced, rejected former beta? As if answering his unspoken doubt, Evelyn reached out and rested her warm hand over his heart, right over the blood moon medallion. The moment her skin made contact with the silver, a blinding flare of crimson light erupted from the pendant, illuminating the entire clearing and causing the ancient trees to sway as if bowing to an invisible force. Elijah felt a sudden surge of ancient power violently awaken within his blood, threatening to shatter his control. Did Evelyn already know the dangerous secret his family had carried for centuries? Or was this surprising union merely the opening move in a deadly game of political warfare? The blinding crimson radiance fading from the medallion left an undeniable silence hanging in the cold night air, broken only by the rapid breathing of the two wolves standing at the border. Elijah looked down at his trembling hands, feeling the lingering heat of an ancient power pulsing through his veins like liquid fire. His senses heightened exponentially. He could hear the faint heartbeat of a deer miles away, and feel the delicate shift of the night breeze against every hair on his arm. Evelyn watched him closely, her emerald eyes shining with a combination of awe and deep strategic calculated relief. She had studied the ancient histories hidden within the restricted vaults of Frost Peak, and she knew without a shadow of a doubt that the crimson aura was the undisputed mark of the royal blood moon line, a legendary lineage thought to be extinct for over 3 centuries. "You knew," Elijah whispered, his voice resonating with a deep, authoritative baritone that surprised even himself. The sheer aura emanating from him made the ambient spirit of the forest settle in submission. "You knew what this crest meant before you even approached me." Evelyn offered a subtle, elegant smile, pulling her dark mantle tighter around her shoulders to shield herself from the lingering static charge in the air. "I knew of the legends, Elijah, but seeing the bloodline awaken is something no history book can adequately prepare a ruler for, she explained softly, her voice steady, despite the overwhelming presence standing before her. My father spent his life searching for traces of the Blood Moon line, believing that only a true primordial alpha could unite the fractured northern territories before ambitious tyrants like Vance destroyed everything we built. Evelyn gestured toward the path leading up into the jagged peaks of Frost Peak, inviting him to walk beside her into her realm. As they walked through the snow-dusted trails, she laid out the precarious reality of their current political landscape. Her pack, renowned for its formidable mountain strongholds and ancient scholar traditions, was under immense pressure. Alpha Vance had already coerced 3 neighboring minor packs into submission through brutal displays of force and strategic marriages. By taking Chloe as his mate, Vance had secured access to the iron mines of Silver Ridge, effectively surrounding Frost Peak. Evelyn needed a political countershield, but more importantly, she refused to hand her people over to a ruthless conqueror. A political marriage between a reigning Luna and a disgraced former Beta will draw immediate scorn from the Council of Elders, Elijah observed, his tactical mind, honed by years of managing Silver Ridge's defenses, swiftly analyzing the board. Vance will view it as an act of desperation, a pathetic attempt by a leader with no male heir to secure protection. Evelyn paused at a cliffside overlook, gazing down at the glowing lights of the Frost Peak village nestled safely in the valley below. Let them think it is desperation, she replied, turning to face him with an expression of fierce resolve. Arrogance makes men careless. Vance will underestimate us, believing he is marching toward an easy victory, unaware that he is stepping into the den of a sleeping giant. They reached the grand sanctuary of the Frost Peak Fortress, an ancient stone citadel carved directly into the mountain face. Unlike the ostentatious and brutal decorations of the Ironclaw Pack, Evelyn's home was built on warmth, historical preservation, and dignified strength. However, the unexpected arrival of Elijah at the Luna's side immediately sparked whispers among the guards and nobles attending the hall. Lord Alistair, the gray-haired senior counselor of Frost Peak, stepped forward with a deep frown etched into his weather-beaten face. "My Luna," Alistair began, bowing respectfully before casting a suspicious glare at Elijah's damp, unadorned clothing. "The border scouts reported your presence near Silver Ridge, but surely bringing a disgraced outcast into the inner sanctum is a risk we cannot afford, especially with Vance's emissaries arriving tomorrow." "Lord Alistair," Evelyn spoke, her tone instantly silencing the murmurs echoing across the stone hall. "Elijah is not an outcast within these walls. He is my chosen partner, and by the end of this week, he will be crowned as the co-ruler and alpha of Frost Peak." A collective gasp echoed through the assembly. Alistair's eyes widened in disbelief and outrage. A beta without an alpha crest? A man thrown away by a minor pack? Luna Evelyn, the council will never approve such an unholy union. It invites war with Ironclaw. Evelyn stepped forward, standing side by side with Elijah, her hand firmly resting on his arm. "The council will obey the ancient laws of Frost Peak, which dictate that the Luna has sole authority to choose her consort. Furthermore, Elijah's blood holds secrets that supersede the petty authority of Vance or any council in these lands." Later that evening, in the quiet solitude of the fortress's private study, Evelyn presented Elijah with an ancient parchment detailing the complex physiology of the Blood Moon wolves, a specific fact preserved only in high mountain archives. Unlike standard alphas whose strength relies purely on muscle mass and pack numbers, a Blood Moon alpha possesses an innate biological ability known as the harmonic command, Evelyn explained, pointing to the delicate Latin script on the page. "Your vocal pitch, when pushed by true alpha intent, can directly override the aggressive neurological impulses of other wolves, forcing them into immediate physical compliance regardless of their rank." Elijah read the words carefully, realizing that the strange, overwhelming sensation he had felt during his confrontation with Vance was not mere anger, but his ancient biology trying to assert absolute dominance over an inferior bully. As the days passed leading up to the ceremonial union, Elijah and Evelyn spent countless hours preparing their joint strategy, growing surprisingly close in the process. What began as an alliance of necessity rapidly transformed into a deep mutual respect and genuine emotional bond. Elijah found himself captivated by Evelyn's sharp intellect, her unwavering dedication to her people, and her subtle warmth when they were alone. In turn, Evelyn discovered that beneath Elijah's quiet demeanor lay a deeply honorable, highly intelligent man whose true potential had been systematically suppressed by the toxic hierarchy of Silver Ridge. For the first time in his life, Elijah felt truly seen and valued not for what rank he held, but for who he was as a person. The day of the formal wedding arrived, bringing a heavy frost that coated the mountain pines in shimmering white crystal. Delegations from across the region gathered in the grand courtyard of Frost Peak, eager to witness what many considered to be Luna Evelyn's greatest political blunder. Among the crowd stood Alpha Vance and his newly claimed mate, Chloe. Chloe was dressed in extravagant silks bought with Ironclaw wealth, yet her expression turned sour the moment she saw Elijah standing on the elevated marble altar. He no longer looked like the defeated, broken man she had abandoned in the rain. He was clad in traditional high-ranking mountain armor, his posture commanding, his shoulders broad, and his gaze calm and unwavering. Alpha Vance stepped forward before the ceremony could fully commence, his loud, abrasive voice cutting through the respectful silence of the courtyard. "Is this a joke, Luna Evelyn?" Vance barked, letting out a booming laugh that made several minor pack leaders chuckle nervously. "You reject dozens of powerful alphas across the continent, only to take my scraps. You marry a discarded beta who couldn't even keep his own mate satisfied?" Chloe stepped up beside Vance, sneering openly at her former lover. "You always settled for less, Elijah," she called out, her voice dripping with venomous disdain. "You think wearing fancy armor makes you a ruler? You are nothing compared to a real alpha like Vance. You are just a placeholder for a dying pack." The crowd held its breath as Evelyn stepped up beside Elijah, taking his hand gently in hers. She did not raise her voice. Instead, her clear, melodious tone cut through the crisp mountain air like a newly sharpened blade. "You speak of strength and value, Alpha Vance, yet you demonstrate the intellect of a rabid scavenger," Evelyn declared, looking down at the mocking pair with absolute contempt. "You took a woman who trades her loyalty for titles, believing you gained a prize. And you, Chloe, discarded gold because you were blinded by cheap brass." Elijah stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Vance's arrogant gaze. The silver medallion against his chest began to radiate a warm, golden light beneath his armor as he prepared to speak. "If you came to mock us, Vance, you have wasted your journey," Elijah said, his voice dropping an octave, carrying a subtle, resonant vibration that caused the surrounding guards to instinctively straighten their backs. Vance laughed again, taking a deliberate, threatening step toward the altar, flashing his lengthened alpha fangs in a brazen attempt to intimidate the groom. "I came to claim what is mine," Vance roared, releasing a wave of oppressive alpha aura, meant to force Elijah to his knees in front of the entire assembly. "Frost Peak will bow to Ironclaw, and I will tear this false alpha apart with my bare hands." Chloe watched with a smirk, expecting Elijah to collapse under Vance's overwhelming pressure, just as he had at the ceremonial ring days ago. But Elijah did not flinch. He did not bow. Instead, as Vance's coercive energy hit him, the ancient blood moon medallion flared into a blinding crimson brilliance. Elijah took a deep, steady breath and unleashed his own dormant aura. A physical shockwave of golden and crimson energy erupted from Elijah, instantly neutralizing Vance's pressure and slamming into the crowd like a battering ram. The sheer force of Elijah's raw, primordial power forced every alpha and beta in the courtyard, including Vance himself, to drop to one knee as their wolves shrieked in primal submission. Vance gasped for air, his knees locked against the frozen stone, his eyes wide with utter terror as he looked up at the man he had mocked. Chloe stumbled backward, falling unceremoniously into the snow, her face pale as she felt the suffocating absolute authority radiating from her ex-fiancé. Elijah walked slowly down the marble steps, stopping right in front of the trembling Ironclaw leader. "You claimed my blood was weak, Vance," Elijah said, his voice echoing across the silent courtyard like thunder. "You claimed I lacked ancestral heritage." He reached into his coat and revealed the glowing crimson emblem of the blood moon. A horrified whisper rippled through the older council members and visiting elders. The blood moon. The ancient royal line. Lord Alistair gasped, dropping to his knees out of genuine reverence, followed quickly by the rest of the Frost Peak elders. Vance gritted his teeth, struggling with all his might against the biological compulsion of the harmonic command, his muscles tearing under the immense strain. "This is impossible. The blood moon line was wiped out," Vance choked out, sweat pouring down his face. Elijah looked down at him with cold detachment. "We did not perish, Vance. We simply waited for a generation that lacked honor, so we could remind you what a true alpha really is." Evelyn walked down to stand proudly at Elijah's side, placing her hand over his. Together, they completed the sacred vows right there in front of the kneeling, defeated tyrant and the stunned audience, sealing their union as Alpha and Luna of Frost Peak. The crowd erupted into wild cheers as the Mountain Pack embraced their true, supreme leader. However, as Vance was forced to retreat in total disgrace with a pale, trembling Chloe in tow, a dark realization struck Elijah. Vance's sudden attack was not just arrogant posturing. A hidden scout from the perimeter rushed into the courtyard, holding a sealed letter intercepted from an Ironclaw courier. Elijah broke the wax seal and scanned the contents, his eyes narrowing as his golden irises flickered with dangerous intensity. The letter revealed that Vance had already struck a secret, treasonous alliance with the Darkfang Vanguard, a notorious rogue mercenary army massing at the Southern Pass, and their full-scale invasion of Frost Peak was set to begin at midnight. Was this sudden marriage enough to unite the fractured mountain clans before the slaughter began? Or had Elijah awakened his ancestral blood only to lead his new pack into an unwinnable war? The crisp mountain breeze carried the acrid scent of impending war, turning the joyful celebration in the central courtyard into an emergency council of military strategy. Lord Alistair rushed forward, his earlier skepticism completely replaced by urgent deference. "Alpha Elijah, the Darkfang Vanguard is not a standard pack force," the old advisor warned, pointing frantically to a topographical map unrolled upon a marble table. "They are ruthless mercenaries who specialize in siege tactics and dirty warfare. If Vance's Ironclaw pack merges with their front line at the Southern Pass at midnight, our perimeter towers will fall within 2 hours." Evelyn stepped to the head of the table, her eyes burning with tactical focus as she analyzed the terrain. "The Southern Pass is narrow, surrounded by steep icy cliffs," she stated, her voice calm and calculated despite the rising panic among the elders. "They expect us to defend the main gate like trapped deer, but they do not realize that the supreme blood moon line does not hide behind stone walls." She turned her gaze to Elijah, whose presence now radiated a steady, magnetic strength that anchored everyone in the room. Elijah traced his fingers across the jagged contours of the Frost Peak borders, his beta training merging seamlessly with his newly awakened alpha instincts. "Vance's arrogance is his greatest weakness," Elijah said, his voice echoing with a deep resonance that made the guards at the door stand taller. "He assumes Chloe gave him full intelligence on my capabilities, but Chloe only knew the man I pretended to be while serving a corrupt hierarchy. She knows nothing of the Blood Moon heritage or our strategic discipline." He looked directly at Evelyn, a silent understanding passing between them. In just a few days, their union had transcended political convenience, evolving into a profound emotional and spiritual bond. "We will not wait for them at the gates," Elijah declared firmly. "We will split our forces. Evelyn, you will command the crest archers along the upper ridges to cut off their retreat. I will personally lead the vanguard at the choke point, and break their advance before they can establish a siege line. To prepare for the battle, Elijah retreated to the ancient armor vault beneath the citadel to retrieve the ancestral relic of his lineage, the Eclipse greatsword. As he wrapped his fingers around the worn leather hilt, a fascinating historical reality came into focus. Ancient werewolf texts preserved within the Frostpeak Library detailed that the Blood Moon line was uniquely gifted with a dense biological bone structure and hyper-accelerated neural reflexes, allowing them to exert physical force equivalent to 10 standard alphas without succumbing to fatigue. This was the true reason the ancient tyrant Pax had feared his family, not merely their political royal status, but their sheer, terrifying combat efficiency. By 11:00 p.m., a dense mountain fog rolled over the jagged rocks of the southern pass, swallowing the moon in a shroud of icy mist. Elijah stood at the narrow mouth of the canyon, clad in dark steel plate, flanked by 50 of Frostpeak's most hardened warriors. Above them, hidden among the sheer cliffs, Evelyn and her archers lay in wait, their bows pulled tight, eyes fixed on the dark valley below. Precisely at midnight, the ground began to tremble. The heavy, chaotic thunder of hundreds of armored boots echoed through the canyon as the combined forces of Ironclaw and the Darkfang vanguard marched into view. At the front of the massive host rode Alpha Vance, his face twisted in a sneer of pure malice, flanked by the mercenary commander, a towering brute named Kalen. Behind them, keeping a safe distance near the supply wagons, was Chloe, dressed in fur robes, eager to watch the destruction of the pack that had dared to humiliate her new mate. "Halt!" Vance roared, raising a gloved fist as he spotted the single, solitary figure standing in the middle of the narrow pass. He peered through the mist, his laughter booming off the canyon walls as he recognized Elijah. "Look at this, Kalen. The false alpha thinks he can play the lone hero. Where is your precious Luna, Elijah? Did she abandon you to die in the frost just like Chloe did?" Elijah did not answer with insults. He simply drew the Eclipse greatsword, resting its heavy tip against the frozen ground, his dark eyes glowing with a sudden, intense golden crimson light that pierced through the thick fog. "You brought mercenaries to a sacred territory, Vance." Elijah spoke, his voice carried by the harmonic command, vibrating through the very marrow of every soldier in the canyon. "You betrayed the ancient laws of the Pack Council for petty vengeance. Step forward and face me in single combat, or let your men die for your cowardice." Mercenary Commander Kalen spat on the ground, clearly unimpressed by the legendary aura. "I don't care about your ancient bloodline, boy," Kalen growled, unsheathing a massive double-headed battle axe. "Ironclaw pays in gold, and your head is worth a fortune." With a deafening war cry, Kalen charged forward, leading a wave of 50 heavy mercenary shock troops directly at Elijah. What followed was a display of combat dominance that would be retold in northern legends for centuries. As Kalen swung his massive axe in a deadly horizontal arc, Elijah moved with unnatural fluid speed. He parried the strike with effortless precision, the impact shattering Kalen's steel axe head into dozens of flying shards. Before the commander could react, Elijah delivered a swift, devastating backhand strike that sent the giant mercenary crashing into the rock face, unconscious before he hit the ground. The remaining mercenaries hesitated, horrified by the ease with which their leader had been dismantled. But Elijah gave them no time to regroup. He stepped forward, unleashing the full, unbridled power of his Blood Moon aura. A physical shockwave of golden light erupted from his body, slamming into the advancing line like a roaring blizzard. The sheer biological weight of his command forced the frontline soldiers to drop their weapons, their wolves howling in sheer, uncontrollable terror as their instincts demanded total submission to the true Royal Alpha. "Archers! Loose!" Evelyn's voice echoed from the high cliffs above. A rain of silver-tipped arrows descended upon the rear ranks of the Ironclaw forces, pinning them in place and blocking their escape routes. The battle had turned into a total trap within minutes. seeing his army crumbling and his mercenary allies fleeing in terror. Alpha Vance went wild with desperate, rabid rage. He let out a hideous, warped howl, his body expanding as he fully shifted into his giant, dark-furred alpha wolf form. Red foam dripped from his jaws as he leaped over his trembling soldiers, lunging directly at Elijah's throat with killing intent. Chloe watched from the rear, her heart hammering against her ribs. She expected Vance's sheer, monstrous mass to crush Elijah instantly. But as the giant beast descended upon him, Elijah did not step back. He planted his boots into the frozen stone, raised his left arm to catch Vance's snapping jaws by the throat, and stood his ground against the massive momentum without giving an inch. The force of the impact created a crater in the icy ground beneath them, but Elijah held the giant beast suspended in midair with a single iron grip. Vance's wild, crimson eyes locked onto Elijah's glowing golden crimson irises, and for the first time, Vance felt true, existential dread. "You took my mate, you slandered my name, and you brought war to my home," Elijah growled, his voice deep, terrifying, and echoing with the power of 100 alpha ancestors. With a surge of immense physical power, Elijah slammed the giant wolf onto the hard stone, knocking the wind from Vance's lungs and causing him to revert instantly back into his bruised, bleeding human form. Elijah stood over the broken tyrant, his great sword hovering inches from Vance's throat. The surrounding Ironclaw soldiers threw down their weapons, bowing their heads in complete surrender. The battle was won, total and absolute. Chloe, terrified for her life, stumbled forward through the snow, tears streaming down her face as she looked at Elijah in a mixture of horror, awe, and desperate regret. She realized now the catastrophic mistake she had made. The man she had discarded as a weak, worthless beta was a god among wolves, a true royal king who held the power of life and death in his hands. "Elijah, please," Chloe sobbed, dropping to her knees at his feet, reaching out toward him with trembling hands. "I was tricked. Vance lied to me. He forced me to leave you. I still love you, Elijah. I am your true mate. Take me back, please. I will be your dutiful Luna." Elijah turned his head slowly to look at Chloe, his golden eyes cold and devoid of any lingering affection. Before he could speak, a dignified, majestic figure descended from the cliff path. Evelyn walked calmly into the center of the battlefield, her dark cloak pristine, her emerald eyes fixed on the sniveling woman on the ground. Evelyn stepped up to Elijah's side, sliding her hand into his. The contrast between the two women was absolute. Chloe, pathetic and treacherous, begging for status. Evelyn, powerful, loyal, and noble, standing as his true equal. "You traded loyalty for power, Chloe," Evelyn said softly, her voice cutting through Chloe's frantic cries like ice. "And in doing so, you proved yourself unworthy of standing beside a true king." Evelyn then looked down at the bleeding Vance, then back at Elijah. "What is your judgment, my Lord Alpha?" Elijah raised his greatsword, pointing it directly at the horizon beyond the northern mountains. "Alpha Vance of Ironclaw will be stripped of his title, his lands annexed to Frost Peak, and he shall live out his days in the deep vaults as a prisoner of state," Elijah declared firmly. He then looked down at Chloe, his tone dropping to a cold, final whisper. "And as for you, Chloe, you are banished from all northern territories forever. If you ever set foot in these lands again, your life is forfeit." Chloe let out a heartbroken wail as the Frost Peak guards dragged her and Vance away in chains. The battle was over, the threat eradicated, and the rightful order restored. Yet, as Elijah held Evelyn's hand looking over the vast, snow-covered realm, now under their unified rule, a strange, glowing light caught his eye from the pocket of Vance's coat. A black obsidian crest, bearing the ancient mark of the High Shadow Council, an empire far greater and darker than Ironclaw, located across the southern seas. had Vance merely been a pawn in a much grander, ancient game of global conquest aimed at hunting down the last Blood Moon Alpha. The obsidian crest lay heavy in Elijah's palm, its cold, unnatural surface seeming to drink in the ambient moonlight. The mark of the High Shadow Council, a secretive, ancient order of elite alphas that had ruled the southern empires for centuries, was unmistakable. Elijah's fingers traced the intricate, ominous engraving, feeling the faint trace of dark, coercive magic woven into the stone. Beside him, Evelyn examined the artifact with a sharp, analytical gaze, her emerald eyes reflecting the flickering torches of the battlefield. Vance was never a mastermind, Evelyn said quietly, her voice ringing clear over the hushed whispers of the gathered soldiers. He was an ambitious puppet. The High Shadow Council supplied him with Darkfang mercenaries and political backing to destabilize the northern territories, aiming to crush Frostpeak before your bloodline could ever awaken. Elijah closed his hand around the crest, the sheer density of his blood moon aura surging through his arm. With a sharp, crystalline crack, the black obsidian shattered into fine dust, blowing away into the freezing mountain wind. "Then they have failed," Elijah stated, his voice resonating with an undeniable kingly authority that made the surrounding guards bow their heads in reverence. They sought to extinguish the embers of the Blood Moon line. Instead, they forced it to ignite. With the battle at the Southern Pass decisively won, Elijah and Evelyn led their victorious army back to the stone citadel of Frost Peak. News of Vance's utter defeat and the revelation of Elijah's royal lineage had spread across the northern territories like wildfire. By the time the morning sun broke over the snow-capped peaks, casting a brilliant crimson and gold wash across the valley, representatives from every minor pack in the region had gathered in the grand courtyard. They did not come to challenge or negotiate. They came to bow. Inside the great hall, the formal coronation ceremony commenced. The atmosphere was charged with a profound, spiritual reverence. Lord Alistair stood at the base of the high dais, holding the ancient, gem-encrusted crown of the Frost Monarchs. Beside him stood the elders of the council, their previous doubts completely erased, replaced by an overwhelming pride in their new leader. Evelyn stepped forward, wearing a flowing velvet gown of deep emerald and silver, her long dark hair braided with mountain wild blossoms. She took her place on the left throne, her presence radiating a calm, indestructible strength. Elijah stepped up beside her, clad in pristine silver plate armor, the blood moon medallion resting proudly over his heart, glowing with a soft, steady golden light. By the ancient laws of the mountain and the sacred blood of the primordial rulers, Lord Alistair proclaimed, his voice echoing off the vaulted stone ceilings. We crown Elijah of the Blood Moon lineage as the supreme alpha of the United Northern Realms and seal his permanent union with Luna Evelyn, guardian of Frost Peak. As the crown was placed upon Elijah's head, a blinding wave of golden crimson energy erupted from his body, expanding outward across the entire citadel and down into the valley below. The harmonic command of the true Royal Alpha swept over every wolf within 50 miles, instilling a deep sense of absolute peace, protection, and unshakable loyalty. The crowd outside broke into a deafening roar of cheers, their collective spirit lifted from years of fear and division. Elijah turned to Evelyn, taking her hands in his. The political alliance that had begun in the rain as a desperate strategic gamble had blossomed into an unconditional, soul-binding love. In Evelyn, Elijah had found not just a powerful partner, but a woman who recognized his true worth when he had nothing, offering him respect and love when the rest of the world offered only scorn. "You gave me a home when I was lost in the dark, Evelyn," Elijah murmured, his dark eyes shining with deep emotional warmth as he looked into her emerald gaze. "You saw a king where others saw an outcast." Evelyn smiled softly, reaching up to gently touch his cheek. "A king is not made by a title, Elijah. A king is revealed by his honor, his courage, and his heart. I merely held up the mirror so you could see what was always inside you. Later that evening, as the grand feast raged in the main halls below, Elijah and Evelyn walked out onto the high balcony of the central tower, looking out over their peaceful, vast kingdom under the starlit sky. The northern lands were finally united, strong, and safe under a sovereign who ruled with justice rather than cruelty. Yet, as Elijah looked toward the dark, distant horizons of the south, he knew that the destruction of Vance was merely the opening chapter of a much greater destiny. The High Shadow Council would eventually learn of his rise, and the true test of his royal blood was yet to come. But he was no longer a lonely, rejected beta bleeding in the rain. He was a supreme alpha, standing side by side with the love of his life, ready to shatter any threat that dared approach his home. The journey of transformation was complete. The outcast had become the ultimate ruler, proving that true blood and noble honor will always rise above cheap aggression and bitter treachery. History is rarely written by those who boast of their strength in the light, but rather by those who endure the darkest shadows with unyielding integrity. When betrayed by those he trusted most, Elijah did not allow bitterness to consume him. Instead, he embraced his hidden truth and allowed adversity to forge him into the ruler he was destined to become. True power does not come from forcing others to bow. It comes from possessing a spirit so noble that others willingly stand beside you in the storm. A crown bought with cruelty will always crumble under the weight of its own arrogance, but a throne built on honor, loyalty, and true love shall endure for eternity. What would you have done if you discovered a dormant, legendary power within yourself right after experiencing your greatest betrayal?